Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Kaiju number 8, Season 2, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're picking up in the aftermath of the fight where Narumi and Kafka are fighting Kaiju number 9, and they can't fully get to this thing. Obviously, having fused with Asao and his kaiju weapons, this thing has gotten a massive boost. Plus, it's a little more equipped and knowledgeable on how to deal with Kafka and Narumi. And they're going at it and doing what they can. But the benefit they have is that because specifically Kafka is weakening this thing's like healing abilities, because Kafka, I don't think it's just that Kafka does so much damage it can't heal. This thing, he literally has the power to disrupt the Kaiju's healing factor. And even 9 is still, even its enhanced state, its body is starting to fall apart because at the very least, it's in such a state right now that it can't just fully assimilate. It still needs time to fully assimilate to this new form. And because Kafka is disrupting its healing, it can't even latch on, keep this form stable enough because he's disrupting the healing. And then you slap on top of that Narumi using his kaiju eyes to like find this thing's weak points and strike. Like its body is falling apart and they're taking every opportunity they have. And you have that moment where like Kafka's charging up, and for him it's like, this is for Kikuru, because he's like, it's not fair like for what happened to be happening to her, because she's thinking about all the stuff between her and her dad last episode and what this meant to her and like what it means to lose her dad. You know, it's like, it's so unfair, and he's just hitting this thing with everything he's got. But for 9, his takeaway is, you're still the biggest problem. I thought I had countermeasures against you, but even in this fight, I've learned I still need to worry about you. I still need to wipe you out. And so they're doing everything they can, but it's like, just when they're getting so close, because this was the one opportunity they had to finish this thing while it's in its weak enough state. But the problem is, it had a countermeasure, and it sacrifices basically a good chunk of its remaining body to set off an explosion. And then in that moment, they're still standing, even though it's trying to take away. But it's like, yo, Narumi and Kafka are still standing, but it knows, using Asao's knowledge, but I think just knowing them enough as humans, like, you guys care too much about others, so it aims for the guy that was helping operate for Asao, and then also aims for Kikuro, and they both respectively get blocked by Narumi and Kafka. And just as this thing is leaving, it reveals Asao's face, and it's just like, right, the era of the kaiju is coming next time we meet. And it's just that line, especially when the dust is settled and Kafka standing there and his form is like disappearing, and him just being like, don't you dare like say that shit, wearing Asao's face. And it's just like the most frustrating thing of like, that bastard got away, we couldn't properly avenge Asao. Next cut is to his funeral. Everyone's there across the different divisions, and obviously like everyone's motivated by this, you know. And I think it's beautiful and it speaks volumes. The only one shedding tears is Kafka, because he can't hold himself back. But I mean, obviously he's not the only one. So is Kikuru. And you know what that... And we saw in episode 3, like, how she tried not to cry at her mom's funeral, even though she did, because she saw her father not doing it. So she tried to hide her tears. Everyone's fighting back how they're feeling. And Narumi ends up finding Kikuro in Asao's office, because she didn't come to the funeral, and she's like, I'm sorry I didn't come to the funeral. But she's just like frustrated with herself. She's like, if I was stronger, I could have helped. Maybe if I gotten her faster. She's also like, it's because of me that I played a role in why that thing got away. And so she's like, I want you to make me stronger. She's like, I whatever you got to put me through, make me stronger so I can make that thing pay. And Narumi's like, I'm going to make you nearly stronger than anybody else besides me. But basically, I'm going to like drill into you what your dad drilled into me. And so that will be your way. Like, and if you can prove yourself, that will be your way to make up for like any punishment I would be giving you for missing out on your father's funeral. And we see Kafka outside hearing all of that. and we see the thing on his hand. Because initially my takeaway was, yo, I wonder. At first, I thought initially maybe it's like a wound that didn't heal from the fight. Either it's because he was pushing himself so much in his kaiju form that he suffered a wound that's not healing properly, or maybe it's like because this thing has gotten so much stronger, it left some damage that hadn't healed properly. So I was like, oh, is it not going to heal at all, or is it going to heal extremely slowly? But then we see later on when he's just in his casual wear that he's still wearing the glove on his hand. And later on, Narumi learns from some of the team that had examined Kafka. It turns out that that little piece in his hand is part of his body not returning to human form. So now it's become a thing that the more and more he's transforming, the less and less likely he can go back to being human as time passes by. So it's like if he keeps doing this, if he pushes himself too far, he may never go back to being human. He may be stuck as a kaiju forever, you know? And it's like, does Kafka know that? And he does. And, you know, I think that's why he does what he does this episode. He goes back home, cleans up some stuff, clears up some stuff, and why he goes to visit the cleaning crew. Because it's almost like, weirdly enough, because he's like, yo, I'm like, put my head to the grind. We're training. I'm not going to stop until I get Kaiju number 9. But also, like, he knows on the journey there, like, there's a chance I won't come back as Kafka. So he wants them, like, drop some stuff off. Hey, these are some books I think he borrowed for them for when it came to him studying. Hell, even back home, he's now, like, he's got the acceptance letter framed and everything. And but because he even said, who knows how long it's been since he's been home. He says it's been a while, so it might not be since he properly joined Division 3. It might be the last time he was home. Because, like, he went from being locked up to being a part of, like, Division 1. It doesn't seem like he ever had any, like, break in between then and there. So it's just been, like, pretty continuous since the Season 1 finale. Or rather, the penultimate episode of Season 1. So, but like I said, probably even while he was with Division 3, he probably never really had a chance to go home. I wonder, did he go home in that episode? Well, no, because I'm about to say he was sick on base, if I remember correctly, during, like, that OVA or bonus episode, Hoshina's Day Off. But I was like, yeah, Kafka was sick during that episode, so he was sick on base. But anyway, but like I said, I think he was trying to, like, do some last minute stuff as a human that he could do within reason, and he kind of wanted to spend some time with the crew because these are people he was fighting side by side with as part of the cleanup crew for 10 years. I think there's a part of him that was probably coming back too because it's like it brought him back nostalgia, but also it's like those days are gone and I might not ever get them back, especially going down this road, but I just want to spend time with these guys, just a little bit more time. And he's chainsawing up, some of the ant kaijus, and he's just like, oh yeah, like, they're like, oh, it's still pretty hard to maneuver, like, especially going for the blood vessels, but Kafka's got a talent for this. Then there's the guy that's covering, like, the intestine stuff because Kafka's not around to do it. And he's kind of like, hey, you can always come back to, because you're pretty low on the totem pole there, but their boss, like, sprays him in the face, kind of trying to shut him up. But also it's the look on Kafka's face because it's like, yeah, I might be at the low in the totem pole, but it's also like, that's because you only know about me as Kafka and not Kaiju number 8. And he probably would never want them to know, that aspect of himself. But one of his coworker was like, yo, like, what if we just, like, end up going home, like, running away? He's like, I know it's not the best thing to say, but it's like, he's like, I looked up to Isao. He was, like, invincible to me. And it's like, if he falls, like, what hope does the rest of the defense force have? But their boss, it's like, shut up. Like, the fact of the matter is that they're not going to take this lying down the defense force. They're going to put forth all their effort, and they're going to kill that kaiju. And they're like, man, our boss can seem so cool sometimes, despite being a drunk and owing me, like, 50,000 in, like, a gambling debt. He's just like, shut up. I'd almost wondered, too, if Kafka had come back because he wanted to kind of, Kafka's whole shtick, too, is, like, better understanding like kaijus because of his work with the cleaners and stuff. So I was wondering if he was going to try and take what he can learn on the ground floor with them in this moment and maybe apply it to something against dealing with other kaijus in the future, but also dealing with kaiju number 9. Because he tested out the chainsaw, like I said, just getting reacquainted with some of the equipment. But I feel like there might be some takeaway from this as well that can be applicable to his work with the Defense Force. But we'll see if, like, whether this was just purely like almost checking in with them, saying goodbye, or whether there was a little bit more work involved in that. But either way, we have Kikuro going through her training. Basically, she has to defeat I think her name's like Shino May. I'm gonna butcher her name. She's one of like the platoon leaders. She's the one that uses like the Gatling gun, the dark blue hair, and then like the like turquoise mint colored hair. Basically, Kikuro has to beat her within a month because Narumi's like, that's how long it's going to take me to beat this game, and you have to prove to me that you can beat her within that time frame, because that's the only way you're going to be able to actually fight me. So you had to work your way up to me before we can get to you training against me. And Kikuro is like pushing herself to get this done, which I'm going to keep butchering her name. I want to say it's like Shinomine or something like that, maybe. But she's excited by it, like, oh, someone underneath me, like, trying to come for the throne. Like, oh, like, I'm really excited about that. Like, she really seems like episode 3 kind of showcased that she kind of, like, really was like, oh, like, I find this Kikuro kid interesting. That might have been episode 2, but regardless. Actually, thinking about it, I'm pretty sure it was episode 2, but either way, we had the other one of the heads of the Defense Force gets brought into like whatever secret project Isao was working on, and he's like, oh, like, Isao, like, I could kick your ass, because the fact is that you're always leaving the dirty work to me. So it's like he's telling the guy, continue the project. I can't quite tell, because it looked similar, so I can't tell if that's the same thing Hoshino was walking in on, because we see later on he walks in to see remnants of Kaiju number 10, and he's like, oh, glad to see you're finally awake. So I guess they didn't complete, like, the fight, like Kafka ending things the way he didn't, the thing's not permanently dead, because like the last time we saw it was like saying like, oh, I'm going to wipe you out, and then it kind of died. But I guess enough of it was left, and given enough time, it's recovered. But they put it in a state where I guess it can't properly recover, or maybe it's sustained so much damage it's well beyond recovery at this point. So my thought was immediately like, well, if they're keeping Kaiju number 10 alive, as we've seen time and time again, they've implemented stuff and made, eyes and weapons and armor from, because that was something I think clarified going back to previous episodes. I do believe it wasn't necessarily the weapon she was using. Like I said, it might be a package deal, but I think it's specifically the armor that Kikuro's mom wore that was specifically made from a kaiju. Because once again, she's the only one, because she was known as the Valkyrie, she's the only one who's ever had armor like that. So I can only assume that itself. But like I said, maybe her weapon was too, but it seemed like the weapon might have been something. It could have been from a different kaiju, or like I said, it was maybe all cut from the same kaiju. But I'm wondering, are they going to make a weapon from, because there's two things they could be doing with Kaiju number 10. Either one, they're trying to learn whatever they can from it and use it as intelligence, or two, they're going to try and take from it and either make weapons or continue the thing where they're going to be implementing Kaiju genes into people. Once again, they've already been success stories for it. I mean, I guess you could make the argument technically Narumi is a success story considering like his eyes and everything, but I don't know which way they're going to go with that. And if they did make a weapon, who would get it? Because something I was curious about, like, I wonder would they ever make a weapon specific to Kafka, because like, would he need it? No, but they could also kind of put Kafka in the same position as Kaiju number 9 did. Like, it absorbed Isao's body, but also his Kaiju weapons to make it themselves stronger. So they could go down that route where Kafka starts like devouring and consuming and absorbing other kaijus as well, just to make himself stronger. I mean, what would that look like if he did end up getting a weapon, a kaiju weapon, and would he just absorb that, or would he like wield it as a weapon? I'd be so curious. Once again, anyone that's read the manga, which I don't know if I've talked about this in between those episodes. Like the manga did end like maybe last month. I believe it was sometime last month. Yeah, I think the manga ran for almost like 5 years exactly. Yeah, so it was like a little less than a month ago it ended. I think I only found that out like maybe between episode 3 and 4. I don't remember. I think I knew it by last episode. I might have forgotten to talk about it. But the reason why I was going on that diatribe is like, well, people who've read the manga probably might haven't, well, definitely have an answer on like, you know, whether or not Kafka ever gets a weapon or whether he ends up absorbing kaiju. Once again, I'm not saying that because I want to know the answer. Please don't spoil anything. I'm just like I said, it's like a rhetorical thing of like me theorizing, wondering like, is that the direction things are going to go? So, but with everything all said and done, when Kafka does come back, Narumi comes to him and he's like, yeah, because the question comes of, yo, like, it's not been definitively said whether or not Kafka will be a part of Division 1 or not. He was still in that trial basis, and it was Asao's decision, but now that comes down to Narumi's, and now Narumi's like, I can't have you be a part of the squad, knowing that, you know, because you could end up being a threat later on, because the more we push you to become kaiju and transform, the more you're going to become a kaiju, and it's like, that's kind of unfair to you, but also it puts the unit in threat. But then Narumi grabs him and is like, I actually don't care. Even if you end up going full kaiju, I'll just put you down like I promised I would. But I need you. You and me, we were the only ones there. We saw it. We know what it feels like to see what happened to Asao. So we're motivated more than anyone else. And that feeling, that anger, he's like, I know I'm asking you this, but I know you won't refuse. You wouldn't dare refuse. And for, you know, Kafka, of course, he's like, yeah, I'll see this through no matter what comes. And it's like, all right, follow me. And so I'm wondering, is he going to, because I don't know if he knows about like whatever Asao had planned. And like I said, I don't know if that's the same thing that Hoshina came across with like Kaiju number 10. I don't know if those are the same things, or did Asao have like, because like I said, at the time when we originally saw it, I thought his wife was still alive in some state and he was like experimenting to keep her alive. That's what I was thinking, but it might be a completely different kaiju that they've kept around this entire time. Like, for example, 6, which is the one Kikuro's mom died fighting. So that could be the case. Or like I said, it could also just be like, no, it's the same thing Hoshino was looking at, but I doubt it. I wonder, does each unit have a kaiju, a numbered kaiju that they are experimenting on and keeping going? So like the whole larger project might be like Isao's, but only like the high-ranking, you know, captains and vice captains might be the only ones in the know about everything. That might be what Narumi wants to show Kafka. But we also cut back to all the other members of the defense force as they're all training, because this was the motivation to push everyone even further because of this situation. So we'll ultimately have to wait to see where everything goes from here. Obviously, we also have a little, you know, radio show or thing that Hoshina does, and this time it's Mina, who doesn't speak a lot, but it's mainly about, what's her name? Is it Okonagi? God, I forgot what her name was. She's the main supporter of like the 3rd division. Like, she acts as like the main person who acts on support. And there's a whole conversation because someone else wants to kind of, operator, that's what I was looking for. And it's like someone was writing in, be like, oh, how do I become an operator? And she kind of lays out like, well, the roles as an operator, where it's like, basically for the fighters to like unleash their power, like you have to kind of get permission first, because using your powers like that, unleashing, kind of has an adverse effect on your surroundings. So it's like, yeah, but like it seems like the 3rd division kind of goes a little buck wild with that, so she kind of has to cover bases on that. Also, she's the one that files the reports to the cleanup crews to do stuff, and then Hoshina and Mina go like, "Oh, we're so sorry." She's like, "Oh, what are you guys talking about? Like, why are you guys?" Because they feel like, "Oh wow, we don't realize like how much trouble we caused you." It's kind of like a cute little fun thing, but it's like you're an unsung hero, and we kind of don't appreciate you as much as you deserve appreciation. So I thought that was just kind of a nice thing. So yeah, I'm interested to see where the next episode takes us going forward with everything. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.